Someone said it's unclear. As a homeowner and I'm looking for a heat pump water heater, do I work with BayREN? Do I go to Switches On? Who do I talk to? And if you can take something away from today's forum, what I'd like you to take away is that there are a lot of resources and they vary and they complement each other. And so if you needed to start somewhere, I would call a BayREN Home Plus Home Energy Advisor. And maybe someone could drop that link in the chat for everyone. Switches On has great resources as well, but Switches On is statewide and BayREN is here in your region. And so there are ways that there's overlap. And but in terms of website, Switches On has a great amount of material for you. And we will be sending out actually a follow-up to everyone who registered for the event with resources. There are a lot of information that's been shared here today, and we'd like you to be able to find it again. So besides the slides, we'll have some links and resources as well. So with that, I would like to turn to our three speakers and ask a few questions. Peter, I'm going to start with you. How do we know that tech incentives are being passed on to customers? Several people asked this question. These are generous incentives. We're glad to finally be up to $6,600 perhaps per heat pump water heater, depending on your needs and electrical. How do we know they're getting passed on to the customer?
Yeah, that's a really good question and one that we get pretty often. So we do review every invoice that passes through our application system that's receiving tech incentives. So we'll review the invoice, and it is a key requirement that the invoice does list mention of the incentive directly on there. It's been a little bit of a ramp up to get all contractors aware of all these key rules, but we're working with all of them to be made aware of them. And we are giving contractors the flexibility to either apply it as an instant discount right there to the cost or provide it to the customer after they receive it. We're working with a lot of contractors who are newer to the rebate space and so are still a little bit apprehensive. And so this is one step we're taking to help them manage their risk. But in all cases, there does need to be the incentive directly listed. And if we get wind of any consumer who is working with a contractor who mentioned the incentive, but they never received it, we will absolutely follow up with that contractor and make it right. But short answer, we check every invoice to make sure the incentive is listed.
Thank you. And let's see. A follow-up question was just how do we know that the contractors aren't inflating their prices by that amount? But I guess, looking at the invoice and it's still a competitive market, you would hope that they would be responsive to that as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we don't have control over contractors raising their price in response to incentives, but always advise that customers get at least 3 quotes from eligible contractors. And by doing that, you can ensure that you're getting the most competitive bid. If a contractor starts raising their prices to cover the incentive costs, it's very likely they will just price themselves out.
Thank you. Very helpful. Mark, I'd love to hear more about, there have been many questions about how these heat pump technologies are free or reduced for low-income homes. And I'm curious if you're finding how these programs we've talked about, both tech and the BayREN incentives, how they're supporting the work that you're doing directly. I know you have a Quick Start grant, but kind of an ongoing mode. How are these incentive programs helping work with low-income folks?
Yeah, so directly, I'd say the total cost, like the total installed cost that we've been seeing average for a heat pump water heater is around $4,500. So that incentive, is pretty substantial. And then, like you mentioned, the Quick Start grant that we have now for income qualified folks, for folks that are, more environmentally disadvantaged, communities. We sort of look at that, and then we have some additional funding to take care of that. So that's pretty much how that works. That's like that no wrong door model, just figuring out like, okay, for this customer profile, what are all the available rebates, grants, and anything that we can apply to this for this profile.
Great, thank you. And then to you, Matt, you mentioned that the city of Pleasant Hill is going to be participating in the permitting pilot. Can you give us kind of a forecast of what that looks like and what we might see? And if for folks on this forum who work for a different jurisdiction, what can that mean to them seeing that example?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We're going to do about a 6 to 9 month pilot where first phase of that will be discussions between us and the city of Pleasant Hill where these resources are going to be best implemented. Second phase would be actually operationalizing and implementing them, followed by an assessment period where we look at, were more heat pump water heaters permitted with these resources? Was it faster? Was it qualitatively easier? And then subject to that, we can explore the possibility of other pilots in other jurisdictions. The second piece to that question is, after the stakeholder group session on March 24th, we will be sending out the resources we developed as a beta version to any building department or contractor group that would find them useful. Obviously, we want to hear the valuable voices from contractor groups, from consultants, from architects before having the final version of those materials. But upon receiving that feedback, those will be shared as well.
Yeah, and actually a follow-up question, Matt. I know you're kind of working to support the city staff who are putting in place these permits, but then there's a big translation of what the city is requiring to the customers and the applicants, the contractors who come there. Will there be a part of that as well in terms of outreach materials or working directly with customers?
Outreach to the contractor groups, is that
yeah, to contractors or customers who are coming to pull those the permits, sorry.
I think that's a great question that I think that could be a hurdle that we identify, but because this is an engagement with local building department staff, the intention is it's going to be used by them. We're engaging those folks first, and then if there is supplements that need to be developed, additional trainings that need to be held, we can explore avenues for that. But again, the focus is primarily having these operationalized with local building department staff.
Okay, great, thanks. Peter, I think you answered this question about not needing existing air conditioning as BayREN's rebates do. So for tech, just to reiterate that, BayREN requires that you have a gas furnace and an AC unit in order to get a rebate. Tech does not.
Yeah, that's correct. Tech has a ton of flexibility about who we can support. So our focus is on converting the heating source. And again, that heating source doesn't need to be natural gas. A lot of programs are limited to only supporting customers with regulated fuels such as electricity or gas or natural gas. We can support propane, wood burning again, and the customer does not need existing AC. But in the cases where they do, and they qualify for Home Plus, and that could be stacked on top of Tech's existing incentive.
Great, thanks. There are some other questions in the Q&A that are very specific. So you all, when we're finished here, feel free to look at those, although folks will be dropping off. So if you have time. Mark, I have one other question for you. It's kind of a technical question. It might have been better for our very first panel, but I'm wondering if you can help with it. It's asking about installing a control module on the heat pump water heater to help the customer save more energy. And I think this also gets at costs, because running a heat pump water heater or HVAC during peak hours, for example, right now, 4 to 9 p.m. Can cost more because electricity costs more at that time. Can you talk at all about those controls and how you work with customers to make sure that they're not seeing a big increase in their costs?
So yeah, honestly, I'll just start by saying that, yeah, that might have been a better question for Larry, but I cannot say that I've seen an additional control put on. We have installed a few span panels to sort of manage load, but what we do to try to mitigate that risk up front is really rely on the load study, up front, and that energy audit, to try to guard against that. But I've actually not seen, a lot of individual control units.
All right, well, thank you. I want to appreciate all three of you for sharing your knowledge and experience and your work with this group today. We've had 169 participants who are still on. That's a long time for a 3-hour forum. So I want to appreciate everyone who joined us. And I will wrap up by saying that we will have both the recording of today's session, plus the slides and handouts and other resources posted at our BayREN events for this specific forum. And you can actually go back and see all of the other forums that we've recorded You might find some other gems there that you'd like to watch. So if you liked this event, or if you had issues with this event, we'd actually like to hear from both sets of people. We had to have a feedback survey, and you will get that through your email, and you can follow a link to that survey. We would greatly appreciate your feedback. It helps us to do a better job next time. We really value the folks who turn out for our BayREN forums. And you get a bonus. It looks like you would be entered into a giveaway for a solar phone charger. Now, everyone's going to be happy to have that when you need it, whenever that may be. With that, I am going to say thank you from all of us at BayREN, all of your county reps who you met earlier today. Please do reach out, ask us about our programs, because they're better when they're used by you. We're here to support in energy efficiency work and in electrification work, and we're excited about all the things that are coming in this really dynamic area today. So thanks for joining us today and sticking with it, and do fill out our survey. Take care.